Welcome to Focus on Health, a series of educational programs highlighting current health issues sponsored by the School of Nursing at Salisbury University. I'm Dr. Mary DiBartolo, Professor of Nursing at Salisbury University and host of the program. Today I welcome back Katie Dorsch. You are a dietitian and you work at the Richard A. Henson Cancer Institute located at Peninsula Regional Medical Center.
That's right. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. We're back for another installment of our Cooking for Health sub-series of Focus on Health.
Yes.
Because eating right is so important for good health. And I know you want to talk about a very important ongoing topic of how to get the all-important fiber in our diets for general reasons and also for cancer prevention. So first of all, tell us about fiber. Just what is it?
Sure. So fiber is actually a carbohydrate that we eat, and it's not digestible, easily digestible in our digestive system. So what that means is it takes a long time for our bodies to really break it down and get through our system. And what that means is it provides a lot of benefits on its way through our GI tract. So it can help with your bowel movements being more regular. That's what a lot of us think about. But it can also help lower cholesterol. It can help with your microbiome. So you hear a lot in the news these days about gut bacteria and how important that is for health. So eating lots of high fiber foods can help support a good colony of gut bacteria, which offers benefits for health as well.
And what about cancer prevention? What is the evidence on that? I know we have lots of it, but remind us.
Sure, we do. So especially with cancers of the GI tract, like gastric cancer, esophageal cancer, and especially colorectal cancer, there's a lot of benefits to eating a high fiber diet. Those high fiber foods kind of act as like a cleaning system as it moves through us to help keep things moving along, get rid of any toxins or any carcinogens, and help keep healthy cells in our colon.
So there is evidence to support that people that eat a higher fiber diet have lower rates of colon cancer?
Definitely. So with a lot of colon cancer patients, a lot of their diets might be things like processed and cured meats, maybe alcohol, some lower fiber foods that aren't so good for us. So what we see is that patients who are eating higher fiber foods have less risk of colon cancer.
So fiber is a carbohydrate, but it's a very complex carbohydrate. You mentioned it takes a while to break it down, and that's one of the big pluses of it.
Correct, and that also has a lot of benefits for patients that have diabetes. So if you have diabetes and you're eating something that has some simple sugars like a cookie or a piece of cake, or even some juice, your blood sugar tends to rise very quickly. With those complex carbohydrates, even though they are still providing carbohydrates, your blood sugar tends to not rise as quickly and it stays more steady.
Than those carbs that are processed very quickly, yeah. What about, what's the recommended amount of fiber for most people?
So for most people, it's about 25 to 30 grams a day. If you're not quite meeting that goal, it's recommended that you start incorporating higher fiber foods a little more slowly. You don't want to all of a sudden start eating a lot of carbohydrates. That can be very uncomfortable. So just introducing a couple of extra servings of higher fiber foods throughout the day to really try and meet that goal of the 25 to 30 grams.
I know the other thing we talk about in health with some of the benefits of fiber are the fact that not only is it good for cancer prevention and overall general health, but we do see it used when people are on, say, pain medication to help things keep moving, as those medications tend to slow things down.
Correct. So things like insoluble fiber, so that would be foods like raw fruits and vegetables, whole grains, whole wheat breads. Those types of fibers can really help move things through your digestive system. There are other types of fiber called soluble fiber. Those would be things like apples, bananas, oatmeal, and that really has a gelling-like effect. So patients who might have issues with diarrhea or even with cholesterol, it helps kind of suck up that extra cholesterol in your system and lower your overall blood cholesterol. That's what that soluble fiber is good for.
Is that the principle behind, say, it's products like Metamucil and Citracel? I know some people just use those kind of products you can buy at the drugstore.
Correct. So there are what we call functional fibers that are added to foods or sold over the counter that do provide some fiber. And those can be beneficial, especially for patients with issues like constipation or diarrhea, to get a little bit of extra fiber in. But really, for most people, just eating a diet with lots of fruits and vegetables and whole grains is going to be your best solution.
I know you brought some examples, so let's go through them.
Sure. So there are lots of foods that we think of when we talk about fiber. For most of us, we might think of these fruits and vegetables. So things like broccoli, apples, and berries are actually a really great source of fiber. A cup of blackberries has about 8 grams of fiber in it, which is quite a bit.
Yeah. And the same go for like raspberries and blueberries, strawberries?
Yep. Blackberries and raspberries probably have the most. Blueberries just a little bit less. And strawberries are similar to blueberries, but they're a really great source of fiber.
And they're chock full of antioxidants.
That's right.
Supposedly good brain food. So.
Yes, these antioxidants, they'll definitely help with cancer prevention as well. So the blackberries are black or dark purple because of those antioxidants. So those are good to have too. Oats or oatmeal is another great source of fiber. And a good way to get fiber in at breakfast especially. And then things like beans that you can include with your dinner or your lunch, those are a great source of fiber as well.
You brought black beans, but any kind of bean really. There's
Correct.
so many out there now.
Yes, there's a huge variety of beans and lentils, so any of those types of foods are going to be high in fiber and good to start including in your diet.
Lentil soup.
That's right.
A lot of us had that growing up and didn't care for it. We didn't realize how good it was for you.
Correct, yep. So, trying to include more of those things is going to be definitely beneficial.
Very good. I know one thing you wanted to do is show us how to make granola, which is chock full of fiber.
Correct, yeah. Granola is one of my favorite breakfast foods, and it's so simple to make at home. And the benefit to making it at home is you can really control what you put in it. A lot of granolas that you buy in the store might have a lot of added sugar that you don't necessarily need. So this recipe incorporates just a little bit of sugar, because we do need it a little sweetened to be palatable, but you can see it's a minimal amount. And we're making sweet potato granola today, which actually incorporates some mashed or pureed sweet potato as part of the base, and it helps make it nice and crunchy.
Okay, well, let's get started.
All right.
Just give us the amounts of what we're adding and.
Sure, so we're going to start with just old-fashioned rolled oats. This is 3 cups right here. And to that we're going to add 3 tablespoons of sugar, a half tablespoon of cinnamon, and about a 1/4 teaspoon of salt.
Salt.
Yep, just a touch of salt.
Give it a little
Yeah, it really helps.
flavor somehow. Yeah.
Adding salt to sweet things kind of helps bring out that sweet flavor,
okay.
kind of rounds things out a little bit.
Nice.
So we're just going to mix that together. We're also going to add about 1.5 cups of nuts altogether. So here I have a mixture of pecans and walnuts. You could really use whatever kind of nut you wanted to.
Well, tell us about the wonderful nut. I mean, that was maligned for so many years. And now we know nuts are very good for you.
They are very good for you. So nuts, they're not only a good source of fiber, but they do have a lot of healthy fats. So especially things like walnuts that are a good source of vitamin E, which is another antioxidant, can help with cancer prevention. So trying to incorporate some nuts in your diet, it provides a good source of fiber, some protein, as well as some healthy fats.
Well, it's a nice healthy snack in the middle of the day.
It
when you feel
is.
like you need something to tide you over, just a handful of nuts.
Definitely.
Almonds are good.
Any kind of nuts, really.
Have you put almonds in this or?
Yes, I've made this granola with almonds before. You could even use some seeds like sunflower seeds or pumpkin seeds. really any kind of nut or seed that you have on hand.
Seeds are a good source of fiber. Mm-hmm. Very good.
Yep.
All right.
So we're gonna mix this together, and here we're gonna mix together the maple syrup. So this is about 1/3 cup of maple syrup and 1/4 cup of extra virgin olive oil. You could really use whatever kind of oil you wanted to in this recipe.
I know I saw the original recipe had coconut oil, and we talked about how coconut oil is kind of fallen out of favor of late because it's high in saturated fats.
Correct. So coconut oil kind of gets this health halo around it if you look at things on the internet. But it is important to remember that coconut oil does have a lot of saturated fat in it. So that would be similar to the fats that you find in butter or other animal products that really aren't that good for cholesterol. So in general, I prefer to use things like olive oil, canola oil, grapeseed oil.
So that could be a substitute.
Correct.
Very
Yep.
good.
You could really use whatever kind of oil you have on hand. So we're just going to mix this together. This is the maple syrup and olive oil and our pureed or mashed sweet potato. There's about 1/2 cup of sweet potato in here. You could also use a different type of pureed fruit, like a banana, mash a banana. Applesauce is another good substitute, or even canned pumpkin if you had that on hand instead.
That'd be easier than baking and pureeing a sweet potato.
Yeah,
but
so
I know they're
this-
so good for you though, the sweet potatoes.
This sweet potato, I actually just pricked a few holes in it and stuck it in the microwave for 5 minutes, and it was done.
Well, then that's much easier then.
It is, yeah. So it's a quick and easy way to get a baked sweet potato for this recipe. But again, you could certainly substitute with whatever you have on hand.
It takes a little bit to get that mixed in with the oil.
Right,
But then it'll be much easier once you add it here.
correct. So if you have a whisk, this goes a little bit better.
Okay, it's looking good.
Yep. So then we're just going to add our wet ingredients to our dry ingredients.
And this is going to get baked, correct?
Correct. We're going to spread it out on a sheet pan.
What are we preheating the oven to?
The oven is preheating to 350. And it will take about 20 to 25 minutes. I like to use my nose to learn when granola is done baking. Suddenly the house will get very fragrant. You can really smell that cinnamon and those nuts and oats toasting.
But generally about 20, 25 minutes?
Yep.
For it
Yep.
to get to that nice crispy texture.
Yep. And it'll be a little soft when it comes out of the oven, so you have to let it cool. And it will harden and firm up and get crunchy as it cools. Okay. So I will grab our sheet pan.
So when do we add the craisins? Or I guess you could use raisins, but you have craisins here?
Sure. So these are dried cranberries. We're going to add these once the granola is actually baked. If we add it now, those cranberries will get really hard in the oven.
Makes sense.
You could add it during the last few minutes of cooking if you wanted to, but I prefer to just wait until it's all done, and we'll toss it together.
Well, as you said, the granola is pretty soft coming out anyway, so you could just somehow incorporate it.
Yep. So we're gonna put this on a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. I like to use parchment because it makes for easy cleanup.
I'm with you on that. I use parchment all the time for everything, so I don't have to clean a pan when I'm done.
Exactly, and it helps you transfer the granola into a container once it's all cooled off. So you just want to kind of spread it into a nice even layer as best you can. If you have a smaller sheet pan at home, you might want to use 2 of them. Okay.
All right.
And we're going to put this into the oven, again, to bake at 350 for about 20 to 25 minutes.
Okay. So Katie, tell us again, the oven is preheated to 350?
That's right.
And how long does it cook?
It will cook for about 20 to 25 minutes.
But you say you like to use your nose. You
I
can
use my
smell
nose.
the aromas.
Exactly. Once you can really start smelling it, it's getting close to being done.
Okay. So it's about done?
It is. You can smell it, right?
Delicious. Smells great.
So you want to keep an eye on it, make sure it doesn't get too dark in the oven.
So now while it's nice and warm, that's the time to sprinkle the craisins on it?
Correct. We're just going to go ahead and sprinkle the craisins over. And we'll go ahead and wait for this granola to cool down completely. It's a little soft when it comes out of the oven, but as it cools, it'll really crisp up and harden and become that nice crunchy granola.
And about how long does that usually take for it to cool down?
I'd say about an hour or so. Yep. If you need to speed it up, you could certainly stick it in the fridge or the freezer.
And then of course you can store it in some convenient type of airtight container.
That's right. So granola, I like keeping around because it actually keeps pretty well. So if we have it in a nice container like this mason jar or some other storage container, it will really keep for a couple of weeks and
Couple of weeks, really?
Yep, and
That's
stay
good.
nice and crispy.
Very nice.
So it's ready for breakfast.
So when can we try it?
Let's try some now. So we have some already prepared and stored granola.
Yeah.
So Mary, you wanted to eat some
On
on
some
your
Greek yogurt.
your
yeah.
Greek yogurt. So just sprinkle a little bit. And I like to eat my granola more like a cereal. So I usually pour a little bit in a bowl and put a little milk over it.
Now you can top other cereal with granola. Do you do that sometimes? If someone likes a more substantial bowl of cereal and then put some granola on top of that. I know some people like to do that with granola. No?
Sure, you could, if you had more of like a lower fiber breakfast cereal and wanted to bulk it up a little bit, you could certainly add some granola to that. You can also just eat it out of hand as a snack. If you wanted to, even sprinkle it on some ice cream.
Sounds great. Well, let's try this.
Sure.
It looks great. It's just right.
A nice crunch to it. And that sweet potato added a little bit of extra fiber. So in about a ½ cup serving of this granola, there's 5 grams of fiber, which is a good amount to start your day.
And the nuts add a nice touch too, especially once they're roasted a little bit. Gives them a little bit of a crunch.
Yep. You could certainly add some extra fruit to this if you wanted to. If you didn't like dried cranberries, you could use a different dried fruit. Or you could leave it out altogether and just add fresh fruit when you serve it.
What other fruit, like dried apricots or... I know they have all kinds of flavored craisins now too, I guess.
Sure, yeah, different kinds of craisins. You could use dried cherries, raisins, dried blueberries, really whatever strikes your fancy.
It's delicious. Thank you so much. I know you want. I also wanted to ask you about if someone doesn't have time to make granola, say, are there some cereals you'd recommend that are high in fiber?
Sure, so there's a good amount of cereal at the grocery store. Usually you want to look for the things higher up on the shelf. They tend to put those sugary cereals down at kid level. So options higher up on the shelf. Something like a shredded wheat is always a good option. Grape nut cereal. There's a whole selection of a cereal called Great Grains. They have different flavors like cranberry almond or a banana bread flavor. I really like those. Even just Raisin Bran is a great source of fiber.
I grew up on Raisin Bran. It just gets soggy so quickly. You have to eat it fast.
It does, it does. So that is why I like the granola. It stays a little bit crunchier for us. So yeah, there are lots of readily available higher fiber breakfast cereals. Ideally, if you're reading the label, you want at least 5 grams of fiber per serving.
Well, that's a good tip. That's a good piece of information. What we'll do is we'll post the recipe at the end of the program, and of course, any information people might want to seek out at the Richard A. Henson Cancer Center. There's a website you have where you have
Correct.
important information and tips.
Yep.
So we'll post that at the end of the program as well.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us for this edition of Focus on Health here on PAC 14.